Hi everyone, it's Harry. So we're just starting the fall market, and if things don't change, we will likely be in a buyer's market. So that'll give chance for buyers to buy things at reasonable prices. What I mean reasonable is you won't be facing competitive bidding. You might, but for the most part, you won't. And doesn't mean you're going to get a 10% discount on pricing unless someone overpriced the home. You know, even in the highly competitive markets, we find that homes sell either at about 100% of they call list price, the last list price. In tighter, in more lucrative buyers markets, you might be down 2%. You're not going to end up saving like 10% unless the sellers totally mispriced their home or their realtor has done that under the seller's direction. So why am I chatting right now? And I'm just going to give you a bit of a primer on home buying and what you should look at. It goes hand in hand with financing. So what type of home you want versus financing, what you can afford given your salary range. Some of the systems out there give you, the bank systems give you an idea quickly what you can afford. And that's just pre-qualification. It is not pre-approval. And pre-qualification, you're only, I say, about 10% of the way there on the financing condition. When you get pre-approved, you're probably 70 to 80% of the way there, because the bank at that time has looked at your financials and basically says to you, we're willing to give you X dollars. They have a lot of caveats on that. Doesn't mean they'll give you the money, because it'll depend on the property you choose. They reserve the right to review the property and with appraisals and so forth to make sure that what you've made a bid at that has been accepted is reasonable, not overpriced. And that tended to occur a lot when we had a seller's market and there was competitive bidding. Things got bid up real quickly. And sometimes some of the bids that were accepted couldn't be justified, and funny how some of the financing cratered. So what I'm saying here is that use the various websites. You can go to any bank or any mortgage thing, give you an idea of what you can afford based on your salary. But shortly thereafter, you should get a pre-approval in place, because that'll give you a true idea of what the bank will really give you. This will save you a lot of disappointment when you decide you want a home and you go searching with your chosen realtor. Hopefully it's me, but we can see, then you can have an idea of what you can afford, whether it be an apartment, condo, a row town home, a semi-detached or a detached home. My recommendation is always to go with a mortgage broker or specialist, not something with a bank, because the mortgage brokers, they work for you, the banks work for themselves. So they may not always give you the best deals, because inherently any mortgage agent is basically going to, because of the rules of the profession, they have to work in your best interests. So they'll come up with a mortgage that's reasonable to you with respect to terms and interest rates. Sometimes the lowest interest rate isn't the best scenario for folks. The terms may be very important, especially if you expect yourself to have an increasing salary over the term of the mortgage, because a lot of these mortgages allow you to pay down 10 to 20%. And that makes a difference on what these terms allow you to do. And sometimes, for no reason, no fault of your own, you might need to break the mortgage because you're moving out of town, because you got transferred out, or you decide you want to go into a bigger home because, luckily you've got a promotion and you can afford that. So, or you've got a new addition to the family, and then that kind of deal. So those are kind of things you have to think about prior to actually going out there. have an idea of what you really can afford. And then after that, have a list of needs and wants. Okay, needs are, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what locale do you want to be in? And that can be very important because, if you work in the downtown core, you may not want to be in a deep southwest or deep south or deep north if you can afford it. If you work in a deep south, living in the south is fine. Same thing with the north. So those are considerations. And if you have a family, another consideration, because, whether it's Jack or Jill that you're driving around, you don't want to be driving miles to their schooling because, new developments are great. New homes are great, but they tend to be on the outskirts or in new areas, which means the schools and hospitals aren't readily available, or the rec facilities, which means you'll be driving quite a bit. Like you could easily spend an hour a day driving for your kids. So bear that in mind. Sometimes it may be better to go into something that needs a little bit of updating so you don't have to drive that much, because you've got to ask yourself, what's your time worth? What's an hour worth to you? Sorry about that. What's an hour worth to you? Is it worth $10? Is it worth $40? If your salary's $40 an hour, it's $40 a day, and you multiply it by, let's do easy math, 400 days, we're talking $16,000 worth of your time. If you want to think of that one way to think about it, there's value there. So think about that for a while. Location can be very important because it could be near facilities for yourself or your kids or your work. So those are important things to consider. Then becomes the nicety of the homes, and you can get home inspectors to help you out once you've decided on a home, because what'll happen is, okay, you've chosen this home, looks great on first glance, but you'll need a home inspector to go through the HVAC systems, the hot water systems, the window systems, make sure there's no leaks, water intrusions, or that kind of deal. Or just remember, home inspections are not non-invasive, so they can't get everything. Hopefully they'll get 75% of anything that's there, 75, 80%. Stuff that you can't see, or, you hope that the seller discloses it to you because they're required to disclose any material defects. Otherwise, they can get sued later on if something's found out they knew about it. So, though you're somewhat protected, but there's no guarantees. If they don't know about it, you may be left holding the bag to some degree. But a home inspector always helps. Hopefully, you choose the right one that's had the experience to make the right calls and give you some good advice without scaring you off a property. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what you're going to get into and what you think about. This is what I call my home buyer's primer. And obviously, choose a good real estate agent. They choose someone that knows what you're getting into. They're not just out to sell you a home. They're looking out for your benefit. I like to think I'm your real estate advisor, not just a salesperson. So hopefully this helps. Reach out to me, subscribe. I'm on this YouTube station quite a bit, or reach out and book a time, no obligation on Calendly, or just give me a call. Otherwise, have a great day.